Breaking news in crypto. HEX surges nearly 80% as Richard Hart wins the SEC lawsuit. This is a huge victory. It's a victory for Richard Hart, but it's also a victory for all of crypto, especially for the Hexicans and the PulseChain holders. And it's definitely not too late to become one. But this is a win not only for HEX, but for PulseChain and PulseX. This is the first ever lawsuit in crypto where the SEC tried to sue the code itself. Which, when you think about it, doesn't make any sense at all. How can you sue a piece of code? It's not even a human being. It's not a company. It's not like a business entity. It's just code. Now, I'm going to give you the full story of the news, so watch this till the very end. A lot of places out there are going to be covering maybe like one aspect of this. A lot of people have selective hearing, and some of the haters that are actually in disbelief because they've spent so long, hating on Richard Hart or HEX. Some of them are actually in denial, or they want to pretend that this isn't actually a monumental victory and an SEC defeat, which it is. Because in a lot of these cases, with Coinbase, for example, it's good that they're off the hook, but the SEC was the one dismissing the case in all those other cases. In this case, it was the judge that dismissed the case. So Richard Hart filed a motion to dismiss the case altogether because if you actually read into it, the whole thing was ridiculous. And it was dismissed for two reasons. One of them was jurisdiction, which is actually the most important reason in any case, right? Because if you don't have control or jurisdiction over somebody, you can't even make a case. But also for a very overlooked aspect, which is called failure to state a claim. Basically meaning all the claims were bogus. All of the claims were meaningless. They weren't actually claims. They failed to state any claims. We're going to go over this. We're going to look at the actual court document so that you can understand what's going on here, aside from the headlines. Now, the headlines are great. Okay, we've got crypto headlines. We've got mainstream news headlines. Reuters picked it up. Bloomberg picked it up. It's good to see some positive HEX and PulseChain news. And it's good to see that, nature is healing and people are realizing that maybe this Richard Hart guy wasn't a scammer after all. Look, a U.S. federal court dismissed the SEC's case. So the judge dismissed it. The SEC didn't drop it. The SEC did not dismiss it. The judge dismissed it. Okay, the judge dismissed it. The judge looked at the SEC's case and said, wow, this doesn't hold up at all. And the judge determined that Hart's marketing efforts were global rather than specifically targeting the USA. After the news, PulseChain, PulseX, and HEX all surged nearly 80%. They're still up about 40% today so far. Now, it is a weekend, and we are coming in at a time where Ethereum is wrecked, Bitcoin is wrecked. Look, it's crypto. Okay, so 20, 30, 40% dips are a part of crypto, even in a bull market, but people forget that. People seem to forget that. Newbies, they come in, they get scared, just like every single time, right? Bitcoin really only dropped from 100K to 80K. Ethereum, it's been a struggle for Ethereum, okay? But Ethereum is probably down 30, 40%. Now, these are big dips if you're used to the stock market, but if you're used to crypto, in the grand scheme of things, not that big of a dip. So praying for the local bottom in Ethereum and Bitcoin as well. But the fact that these coins, PulseChain, PulseX, and HEX, they're pumping regardless of the terrible situation that's going on in Bitcoin and ETH right now, shows a lot of strength. And we're all hoping for a recovery. We're all hoping for a Bitcoin and ETH recovery very soon as well to continue this pump. And really, what this SEC case unlocks is, everybody has a bias towards authority, right? So even the so-called cypherpunks, anti-authority, anti-establishment crypto guys, a lot of them are all talk. Okay, a lot of them still wanted HEX to be a scam, wanted PulseChain to be a scam, and they would always point to the SEC as the reason why this was so, a scam or whatever. People don't stop and think that perhaps the SEC could have been corrupt. Perhaps the SEC could have been wrong. Under the Biden administration, there was a war on all of crypto, right? So just because somebody's sued by the SEC, right? Just because Elon Musk is being sued by the SEC, does that make Tesla a scam, right? Does that make Jeff Bezos a scammer? If Amazon is sued by the SEC, every successful company, every successful project in crypto, and some of the actual scams were gone after by the SEC. But unfortunately, the SEC got it wrong after being embarrassed by missing FTX and missing Celsius and missing all the multi-billion-dollar scams. Basically, the SEC from 2022 to 2024 went on this enforcement spree where they tried to categorize everything as a security to make up for the fact that they missed some of the biggest multi-billion-dollar scams. Now, the judge ruled against the SEC. Historic case. This was in the Eastern District of New York, the district that the Hexicans actually went to go visit and stand in the courtroom and witness something that's a very big anomaly here. Okay, this is an anomaly. It's a very rare situation that the SEC actually dismisses the case altogether. Most cases end up in a settlement. Okay, basically most cases end up in the defendant paying a bribe or paying a fine, to the SEC so that it just goes away and they stop talking about it. But the dismissal is a definitive win. It's a definitive precedent for the rest of crypto. So now all the people in the USA that were scared to build open source software, HEX, PulseChain, PulseX is just software, just decentralized code. This is part of the tides turning. This is part of, the Trump administration wanting to be crypto friendly. And that starts with open source projects like this, right? There's no PulseChain company. There's no HEX company. There's no CEO. Richard's not the CEO of HEX. I hear that one a lot too. It's funny. That proves that you don't really understand what this is all about when you call Richard Hart the CEO of anything, right? He's the founder, but there's no CEO. I don't work for any company here, okay? Now let's move on. And let's just summarize this. I want you to realize that the judge dismissed the case and the SEC lost. So there was a PulseChain and HEX and PulseX victory and an SEC defeat. Now, this leads everybody to believe that HEX, PulseChain, and PulseX are not securities. They never were in the first place. The claims were all bogus. And really, the fear was the only thing stopping people from buying and holding this anyway. I mean, nobody can stop you. The SEC can't come and take your private keys away from you. So it's not like they ever could have stopped people from buying this coin anyway because it's decentralized. There's no off switch. It's not like an exchange, right? HEX is just a crypto coin that lives in the ether. Just ones and zeros. But we know human beings have a very strong bias to authority. And so a lot of people, when they're just doing their own research, they're Googling stuff like PulseChain and HEX, and they read, SEC lawsuit. They get scared because they don't understand, the SEC. They don't understand what real crypto is. And so you just got to watch out from a lot of fake spins from crypto news out there because a lot of people's ego depended on them hating Richard Hart. They established their identity as a Richard Hart hater. So you're going to see some people are having a hard time accepting the news. The Hexicans on one hand are partying, and then the other people, the haters are kind of doubling down. Now, some of them have apologized. I'd like to give a shout out to like Charles Hoskinson. Apology accepted, right? We don't need to trash talk each other anymore. Charles Hoskinson. There was a guy named Boring Sleuth out there. They made apologies. It's okay. All water under the bridge, right? No worries at all. But some people really didn't like the Gucci suit. the Richard Hart twerking in a Gucci suit. I guess it really, really triggered some people. The mainstream majority of crypto wanted to believe Richard Hart was a scammer, but even the SEC failed to bring any claims against Richard Hart. So look, it's not only for lack of personal jurisdiction, which is the most important part of any case, because if you can't establish jurisdiction, you can't go after somebody outside of your control, or outside of what you're established to be, ruling over. But it's not only lack of personal jurisdiction, it's also failure to state a claim. Failure to state a claim. For the reasons stated below, the motion to dismiss is granted. It's a beautiful thing. The Hexicans are loving this. Now, there are some Jeets that want to get out along the way. Little tangent here. Okay, I'm going to go on a tangent. 0xbistro.io. This is an OTC desk. If you want to buy or sell, if you want to dump your bags now at this point, if you never believed in PulseChain and you want to get out on a 50% gain, you can dump your coins to a direct buyer, OTC, peer-to-peer, smart contract based on 0xbistro.io. I'd like to see more people using this because you won't hurt the price chart if you buy or sell crypto on here, right? Like here we can see somebody's like selling $12,000, but if they sell that to somebody and somebody else buys it, it doesn't cause a big red candle on the chart. So whales, if you want to leave, I don't know why you would want to leave now when we're just getting started. When PulseChain finally has the okay, the all clear to officially pump. But if you want to leave now, don't feel bad. Feel free to leave. Just try not to hurt the price chart on your way out. And realize that at the same time that some people are selling, hey, that's okay if it keeps you up at night. If you can't handle the stress of the uncertainty and the volatility, I get it. But the Hexicans are still here. The Hexican and PulseChain community is going to be enjoying the next few months. Because big news outlets are picking up the HEX and PulseChain victory. Bloomberg picked it up. Reuters picked it up. And look at this, guys. Here's the funny part. Lots of crypto news sites are reporting it. Like I said, some hateful influencers are still in disbelief. So look at Reuters, okay? U.S. judge dismisses SEC fraud lawsuit against HEX crypto founder. Now look at Bloomberg. All right, Bloomberg just can't stop talking about the diamond that Richard Hart bought. So the judge dismisses the SEC case against founder who bought 555 carat diamond. What is it with this diamond, right? You can go back and you can watch an old Richard Hart clip where he said, I donated $27 million to charity, and that didn't get any news articles. I got like one news article. I donated $27 million to charity. I bought the world's largest diamond. I got Tens of news articles. Everybody wants to write about the diamond. Nobody cares about things like, charity or giving good advice or warning people against centralized exchanges. So as part of Richard's, outrageous engagement bait marketing tirade that he went on, a lot of people were triggered by this, but he bought this really large diamond with his own money. I mean, the guy's a rich retired billionaire already, right? So he didn't even use, sacrifice funds necessarily. Not that it can be proven, not that it matters anyway. But then he also goes and puts the diamond on hex.com on the homepage, and it's like, I don't think anybody that bought Hex or that bought PulseChain is really upset that this diamond was purchased by some rich guy as a marketing tactic, right? He renamed the diamond the hex.com diamond. It's like, do you really think he just loves rubbing his hands together and looking at this diamond all day like Scrooge McDuck and just like thinking about how great this rock is? You buy the diamond for marketing purposes is more likely, right? And that's clearly still working. People still can't stop talking about the diamond. They don't even mention Richard Hart's name over here. They just call him the founder who bought the diamond, right? That's what Bloomberg cares about. That's a good representation of like the regular world, normies and outside of crypto. People don't care about crypto and technology and crypto things. People care about, world's largest diamond. Wow, outrageous. And of course, what kind of scammer that really wanted the money? If he was doing this for the money, right, don't you think he would try to hide the fact and not advertise that, we now name the diamond the hex.com diamond? Do scammers really work for 5 years straight without selling a single coin? Do founders really put in so much effort to their scams? Usually not. And it's not that hard for a lot of people to understand. But now the truth is finally coming to light. It's really hard, almost impossible to call Hex and PulseChain a scam at this point. And people are still going to. That's okay. Like I said, some haters, they will never let it go. Just like you're always going to have people that hate, you're always going to have Bitcoin maxis that hate on Ethereum guys. Everybody calls everybody a scammer in crypto because they're on a different team, right? We're very tribal. The Ethereum guys will call XRP guys scammers. XRP guys are going to call Binance Smart Chain guys. They're going to call everyone else a scammer except for their team, right? Or a grifter, whatever it may be. At the end of the day, what really constitutes as a scam is if actual victims were hurt. And in this case, the Hex and PulseChain victory, a lot of people felt more victimized by the SEC putting a giant red candle on the chart due to fear and uncertainty and doubt. But it's been a long 2 years and we finally got closure. The PulseChain and Hex victory was due to a lack of personal jurisdiction over Richard Hart. And of course, jurisdiction over the software because it just doesn't make any sense. And I want to be very clear about this, and failure to state a claim. So the SEC lost not only because they lacked jurisdiction, but because their claims were so weak. It's also the first time the SEC tried to ever sue open source software in crypto. As we said, that doesn't make any sense. So really everybody in crypto should be happy about this because it's a good precedent for anyone building crypto in the USA. Anybody building decentralized software in the USA kind of has the unofficial green light to do so. And what is failure to state a claim? What does that mean anyway? It's a legal term used when a court dismisses a lawsuit because the complaint does not represent enough facts or valid legal theory to support a plausible claim for relief. In other words, even if everything the plaintiff said was true, the law does not recognize these claims are sufficient. And basically that's just like a way to call the whole thing BS, right? In a more legal friendly, family friendly manner. It was all a lie. It was all just BS, guys. I mean, some of the Hex people knew this already. Some people weren't really sure. Some people were sure that Richard Hart was a scammer. But again, it's really hard to say that now, isn't it? Because the US, look, here's another article from cryptobriefing.com. And thank you to all the crypto news sites out there that are reporting the actual facts. Thank you to all the influencers out there, like Ivan on Tech and people like that. A lot of people are actually reporting, even Altcoin Daily. People are reporting the story, mostly truthfully. But you'll find once in a while, there's still some people that try to put a negative spin on it. Cough, cough, Cointelegraph. Here we've got one that says the U.S. federal court dismisses the SEC's case against Hex founder Richard Hart. They talk a lot about personal jurisdiction, which is a key reason, very important reason. The SEC does not have global power. But then they also quote Richard Hart's tweet. His response said, "I appreciate Judge Ammon's careful ruling, which has dismissed all of the SEC's claims against me. This type of victory over the SEC is quite rare. It is very rare indeed to have a full dismissal. PulseChain, PulseX, and Hex are not securities and should be allowed to flourish." Hex has operated flawlessly for 5 years. A very Richard Hart thing to say. And we scroll down and we say, And we see another statement from Richard Hart saying today's decision in favor of cryptocurrency founder and his project over the SEC brings welcome relief and opportunity to all cryptocurrencies. Thank you, President Trump, for supporting cryptocurrencies. So basically just saying, hey, thanks to the new administration. And yes, I know the prices are down right now, but this is very, very bullish for when the prices do come back. They're not going to stay down forever. Anybody telling you the bull market's over, they're either a day trader or they're new here and they just got here, okay? We still need quantitative easing. Crypto's never existed in a quantitative tightening environment. Watch them bring down interest rates off of Trump tariff fears or whatever excuse they want to use. We're going to go back to quantitative easing. That's going to pump the markets. More inflation, so it doesn't come without a cost, right? But just like 4 years ago when we printed our way out of the COVID bubble, something's happening here pretty soon globally. Macro global liquidity cycles in play. All I'm saying is don't worry about the grand scheme of things, guys. Don't worry about the big picture. Okay, but if we're looking at the individual Richard Hart win against the SEC, when everything does come back, what's going to have the most attention? What's going to have the biggest headlines? It's stuff like this. It's stuff like Richard Hart winning against the SEC. Shout out to GeorgeNews.com. GeorgeNews.com, big fan. He's got about 200,000 followers on X. He wrote an article about the SEC accusing Schuler of unregistered securities and misappropriation. The judge dismissed all claims, ruling that his projects are not securities. This win affirms that HEX, PulseChain, and PulseX are decentralized and builds community confidence, boosts community confidence. Now look, he's still got this Interpol notice out for him. But look, does anybody actually believe the Interpol notice? Especially when it came out as the SEC was failing and about to get dismissed. Nobody really believes the Interpol notice either, but this is going to be the next thing to get dropped, in my opinion. Right? Because they're alleging tax evasion and some kind of assault. It doesn't sound like Richard at all. And after doing some research, I did realize that, about 1,000 Interpol red notices are deleted every single year. About 5% of all the Interpol red notices are deleted. You can look up the Vice documentary or the 60 Minutes. Interpol, they're like, somebody once called them the Temu version of the FBI, which I think is pretty funny. They're known for using their red notices sometimes as lawfare, sometimes as a propaganda arm of different governments, if they just want to go after somebody and make their life difficult without actually proof of anything. So if you dig into this Interpol red notice as well and you ask for the source documents, you're actually routed back to the FBI. They say, well, we in Finland, we just heard about this. We're just a party to the case. We're not the actual originators of this case anyway. Please go ask the FBI. So it seems like it's all connected. It seems like it's only a matter of time before we get some more good news about this whole Interpol thing getting dropped as well. But I do highly recommend this article as well. I tweeted about this article. It also gives a pretty good background of Richard Hart's history in entrepreneurship, with early adventures in audio equipment, internet marketing, passions for technology, and anti-aging. It even goes and shows you his old blog, which I should make a video about as well if you take the Wayback Machine and see Richard's old blog. If you want to get a sense of who this guy really is, go read what he was writing 20 years ago in a blog when he thought, he was not famous at all. Sure, the blog has been deleted, but if you go read some of his old blog posts, you can make your own decision pretty easily and ask yourself, does this guy really sound like a scammer? Because if you read his old blog, he actually sounds like a highly positive person. Like, a lot of the stuff he even says today hasn't even changed from 20 years ago. It's actually a trip. It's a very funny trip down memory lane to go read his old blog posts. And you don't have to. You can keep on believing that he's some evil scammer, but you get a good sense of who he really is. Also, just go watch his old videos, right? It's kind of hard to lie about your character and your true intentions when you've got hundreds of hours of live streams and content over the last 7 years. People see Gucci suit and prices are down and people get jealous and angry and they say, oh, you must be dumping all the coins. Provably not true, guys. Provably not true at all. So the headlines are looking better. This is good for search engine optimization. So when people are doing their own research, they're finally going to see some good articles telling the truth about the case getting dropped, tossed out, thrown away. Now, Cointelegraph is funny because they still are trying to cling to, wait, he's still a bad guy though because of Interpol or whatever. Look, it's just one more positive news in the future, right? It's just one more positive news event to look forward to. As we celebrate our win today, we can also look forward to that coming up soon. So PulseChain, it's been winning. It's never gotten hacked, never lost anybody's money. The community's known this. The community's doing better than ever. A lot of the community has built awesome products, great meme coins, great DeFi products, NFTs, the whole thing. And this SEC case is probably the biggest win we've had in a long, long time. but we're just going to keep winning. Interpol gets dropped. That's going to be another win. And you have a choice. You can actually choose to get in before all this good news, before ETH starts running, before Bitcoin starts running. Or, you can just keep calling it a scam. Put your head in the sand. It's completely your choice. Now, here's a funny thing. We're going to actually check out the court document, okay? Let me read this to you guys. Look. Here's the motion to dismiss all claims for lack of personal jurisdiction and failure to state a claim. Now, it's 31 pages long, so I won't bore you, but the judge took the time to write 31 pages as to why the SEC's claims were BS. I think that's pretty awesome. If you go all the way to the end, if the SEC believes in good faith that it can amend the complaint within 20 days, they'll take another look at it, and I highly doubt that the SEC has any interest in coming back because they couldn't find any information to begin with. They tried to subpoena all these influencers. Nobody had any documentation to produce because the SEC kept asking for stuff that didn't exist, right? Like, oh, show me all the payments that Richard Hart is paying you. And it's like, what? That doesn't exist. So probably not going to happen at all. And look at the end. For the reasons set forth, Richard Hart's motion to dismiss is granted. And if you want to make yourself feel good, guys, you can just take a look at, for anybody trying to sugarcoat this and say, oh, well, he won on a technicality or he didn't really win or whatever they're trying to come up with to cope. It's a coping mechanism, guys, because just look at all the times that the SEC has failed to produce anything worth anybody's time here. Failure to state a claim. You just do a control F for the word fail. Failed to respond to Hart's challenge to the SEC on the alter ego theory. They tried to call HEX, PulseChain and PulseX alter egos of Richard Hart, but they failed. They failed to respond to the argument. And again, plaintiff fails to respond to the defendant's argument. Here we've got rule number 12B says fails to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. Here we've got in considering a motion to dismiss for failure to state claims. Richard Hart asserts that the SEC has failed to establish personal jurisdiction. They failed to address the timing issue raised by Hart in the timing that they claimed Hart was buying all these things. The SEC argues that he tried to conduct business over the internet through social media campaigns, but the facts fail to support this decision. SEC fails. Complaint fails to allege that Hart facilitated transactions. He didn't collect credit card information. Nobody entered any information into any forms. It's just blockchain sending and receiving. What is more, the complaint fails to allege that any U.S. investor used ethhex.com to purchase HEX through the secondary market. The SEC fails to meet this test. This test is for the effects tests. The effects test of when it comes to jurisdiction. Richard Hart hasn't lived in the USA for like 2 decades, right? And look, even if the SEC had established personal jurisdiction over Hart, the complaint cannot stand because it fails to plead that the transactions or conduct at issue were domestic under federal securities laws. Even if they had jurisdiction, even if Richard was living in the USA, they would have still failed to adequately plead that the transactions or conduct were actually an issue because it was marketed over the internet. It's not, it's a global thing. It's not like a USA only thing. The complaint fails to allege that investors' deposits were matched on servers in the USA. That is also probably true because where does the blockchain live? The blockchain, it's a global distributed network. You can't really say it lives anywhere or that it's in the USA. The complaint fails to satisfy the first transactional step under Williams. The SEC has failed to adequately allege domestic transactions. The SEC has failed to show that Hart made domestic offers of Hart's crypto assets. The SEC has failed to state a claim for potential fraud claims under either inquiry. Under Morrison, the SEC again fails to sufficiently allege that participants in the PulseChain offering became irrevocably bound in the USA. The SEC fails to allege sufficient facts to place Hart's conduct within the United States. The complaint fails to allege that this conduct was directed at the United States. The SEC also fails to satisfy the effects test, fails to show that alleged fraud had a substantial effect in the United States, and thus, for all these reasons, motion to dismiss is granted. So, that was a lot of failures. Okay, that was a lot of failures. For people that actually read into the case and were keeping up to actually doing their own research, this started to seem kind of obvious, but we're very happy. We're very thankful for Judge Carol Bagley Ammon. Thank you, Carol. And also thank you to Quinn Emanuel. Thank you to Kirk and Ingram, all the lawyers involved. All the lawyers involved did an excellent job. Huge win for crypto and a win for free speech and freedom to transact in general. So if you're thinking about getting into HEX, getting into PulseChain, you no longer have to worry about the big bad SEC. You no longer have to worry about the FUD, the negative press. And it's only going to get better, right? What else can happen after this? Oh, exchanges can now list it. Interpol might get dropped. All kinds of different DeFi middleware, bridges and stuff. No more fear to integrate PulseChain. Okay, so more roads leading into PulseChain, more buy pressure, less fear. It's the perfect formula. Now we just need ETH to come back and Bitcoin to come back. Maybe we even see some treasury wallet moves on chain. A lot of things to get excited about, guys. A lot of things to get excited about. Like, subscribe, share the video, leave a comment, and I will see you on the next one.